Carried. No delegations, no unfinished business. Correspondence. Recommend that council receive this correspondence from B. Gibbons regarding UBCM 2019 groundwater resolution. Councillor Brown.
Second.
Councillor Hitler, all in favor? Carried. So what is your pleasure? Somebody like to start it off?
Maybe I'll just speak a bit to it. So the email was regarding a resolution that was agreed to at UBCM, basically prohibiting groundwater extraction from aquifers. And the province didn't move it forward. So the writer of the email was concerned about that, concerned about water rights in general, I think, in the province, and wanting to know maybe some options for moving it forward, some advocacy with the province. And even though we're not having a conference this year in person, I think they're doing stuff online for UBCM in September. So I think there would be an opportunity to bring this forward again there. Maybe talk to the executive, UBCM executive, and have some more advocacy around this.
And we're going to be getting word shortly as whether they're going to have ministers' meetings online. And if that does come about, I think we should talk to the appropriate ministers. I think that would be stronger for us and for what where we're trying to go with this than a letter.
Okay.
But yeah.
So can we do a letter of advocacy as well?
Absolutely. I think that's the right way to start. And then if the other things happen, then we can get on board there.
Okay.
But I wouldn't want to leave it and think that we're going to get it, and because it might not happen.
Yeah.
Okay. So somebody would like to make a motion?
I can move to write a letter to the Minister of Forests, Lands, Natural Resources, Operations, Rural Development, expressing our concern around the inaction taken on Resolution B-154, I think it is, and ask them to reconsider the resolution.
Okay. Seconder? Councillor Spruill? Second. All in favor? Okay. Would you also like to write UBCM and ask them what the next step in their process would be? I know they've dealt with it this year. Does it have to come back as a resolution again for them to deal with it? Or do they keep on requesting that something be done? I'd like that information myself. So maybe I'll phone the UBCM and ask them what the next steps would be. The staff should be able to tell me. Okay?
Thank you.
Next. You're welcome. Thank you for putting it on. Yep. Going to make sure I'm on the right page here now. Next, we have recommended that council receive the correspondence from the Cumberland Culture and Art Society regarding the Cumberland Village Park 2020 mural project. Councillor Brown, Councillor Sullivan. All in favor? Carried. This is a request from the Cumberland art community, and they would like, this is information. So is there any questions you have as staff? Yes?
I love the idea of doing murals, and in particular supporting artists in this time, because they're not getting to do much out there in the world. So I love the idea. My only concern is that we do intend to pull down that washroom building. It is like a pull down, not a rebuild at some point in the parks plan. So I would hate to do a mural and then have that building removed. So that was my only question. What's happening to the washroom buildings? I think that's in the plan.
Well, first, the recommendation is that we ask the staff to bring forward a
Okay.
report, and we can ask for that in the report. Because if there's no plans to tear it down within the next 5 years, it might be worth it to put it up.
Okay, great.
Okay, so there is a motion there. Any other questions? No? Okay, Councillor Kettler?
Well, yeah.
Okay,
ahead.
Just a comment that I definitely support staff bringing back a report. We've tried to do our art policy we've been attempting at an art policy for the last 5 years. This might even be a little bit of a shortcut, and just sort of getting some paint to brush it is quicker than we would have otherwise with our art policy, which is still upcoming. So yeah, I'd like to, I'll move that council direct staff to bring forward a report to council on the Cumberland Culture and Art Society's mural proposal for Village Park.
Second.
Councillor Spruill, sorry. I see all these hands going up.
I also just wanted to say maybe we could, because they're offering to just do this free except for supplies and stuff. So I was wondering if we could look for some kind of grants where we could actually pay the artists to do this work. There's probably something out there that would fit that for grants. So I think that would maybe something that could be included in the report back from staff.
Clayton, are you on? Would that be possible? Do we need to include that in the motion, or?
We will include a funding proposal in relation to that, Your Worship. So we can certainly add that in there.
Thank you very much. Next, we have reports. Did we not vote?
I don't remember.
I think we seconded, but no voting.
Okay, vote. All in favor? Carried.
I just got a text message that someone said that we are not on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not sure if that's true, but somebody has just messaged me saying that our meeting is not on YouTube.
Your Worship, yeah, we are having some difficulties here at the site. So I know our corporate officer is trying to go live here right now, and I think that may be one of the issues I'm having as well from my my workstation here. So she is working on it right now to try, and that we are recording it. So just so you know, so we can post it afterwards. But right now we are struggling a little bit with going live there. So
just a
Okay.
heads up. Yeah.
As long as they are recording, so we'll continue. Okay. Or do you want to stop? Nope. Okay. Reports. Recommend that the Cumberland Final Housing Needs Report, staff report dated June 12th be received. Brown, Kettler, all in favor? Carried.
Do we want to do the correspondence before we do the report that we added to the agenda? I just don't want to forget about it.
No, we'll do that at the end.
Okay. Thank you.
CAO is Karen on? Yes, Karen, you're on now.
Yes. To Mayor and Council, this report represents the final housing needs report that we were waiting for from the consulting team. You received an earlier draft earlier this spring, so all the reports are final. And as part of the package, we received the Comox Valley Regional Districts, the overall report for all the jurisdictions in the valley. And Alana is here and can answer questions to that. And I'll briefly have her introduce it just after I make a brief presentation. I won't go through all the data. It's be here until tomorrow. Just to say, it's an impressive amount of work that was done, and this is really going to help us with our official community plan and other upcoming strategies that we're working on. So all I want to do is really highlight a little bit of some of the key data that I pulled out and what it might mean for us for the things that we're working on. So obviously housing, which is the purpose of this report, housing needs, as you read, 26.5% of Cumberland residents are renting, and a number of them, 11% of those receive a subsidy. There's also some significant core housing need. 9.7% of Cumberland residents are in core housing need, and 4.2% in extreme core housing need, which means they pay more than 50% of their income on shelter costs. So that is still significant. There have been some improvements in the trend. At the same time, in Cumberland, and the report mentions that a number of times, because we're such a small population, when there's an additional person or a few people, that is often represents quite a large percentage. So these kind of trends are for Cumberland are a little bit more tricky to interpret that perhaps than for the valley overall. So there's also a fair number of people who live in unaffordable accommodation, and sometimes that is due, as the report points out, to the willingness of people to take on fairly large mortgages. Nonetheless, there still is also a significant number of residents who don't do that by choice. They just cannot afford their rent or housing. So in terms of the housing, what we can do, or some of the things that we're going to be following up, and there'll be a follow-up report to this, is looking, and it's also going to be rolled into the OCP review as part of what can we do to improve a housing situation from a municipal perspective. We already offer some density bonusing in some of our zones to encourage building of affordable housing or non-market rental units. We can look a little bit closer at how that is working and if that incentive is actually adequate to result in those kind of units. We can seek to increase the rental housing stock by providing incentives potentially. Cumberland's already permitting secondary suites, fairly generous policy towards secondary suites to increase potential rental housing stock. We're also permitting accessory dwelling units in about half of the village's residential areas, which is fairly generous. So those are secondary rental market units often. We have very few apartments, primary rental markets being built. There's some may potentially underway, as you know, on 2700 Dunsmuir. We are going to come back with a report to update the vacation rental report to see if there's any benefit in regulating that a little bit more. The report that you have in front of you suggests that it's a fairly small portion of the secondary rental market is taken up by vacation rental units. I think it was about 10% or just under 10%. So the question is whether stricter regulation would actually increase in more long-term rentals. But there's different approaches we can use, so we'll discuss that a little bit further. Of course, when we receive rezonings, we can look a little bit more at, I think we've already done that, the possibility at time of rezoning to look at affordability, rental, again, potential rental agreements for some of the units. So that's driven a little bit by development. So we have a few options, so we'll dive into those deeper in a follow-up to this report. Some other things that really I want to point out, which wasn't necessarily the purpose of this housing needs report, but I think it's important to point out because it does support other council strategic priorities. We did just finish a childcare inventory and space creation action plan. So obviously, as you saw in the reports, so staff's also useful to point to, yes, I mean, we know already from that other report that we have a need for childcare spaces because we have so many young families. And of course, not having access to adequate and affordable childcare also, has an impact on just generally affordability for young families, families with young kids, sorry. Families might be young, old, I don't know. Anyways, never mind that. So there's definitely a tie in there. And we have started to bring forward amendments to zoning bylaw to allow childcare spaces, childcare as a use in some additional zones, and we'll continue to look at that. There were some other recommendations in that report that'll come to you. And then finally, the other lens I just want to put on that is climate change. I know that is a priority for council. So the report does also point to Statistic Canada how many Cumberlanders commute to jobs within a CVID, elsewhere in the province and outside the province. So only 17.3% commute within Cumberland. So we have a significant number of people who work elsewhere, which is understandable given we're so small. But it does still point to a need to really continue to focus on developing our industrial and commercial businesses and provide a friendly climate for those kind of enterprises, hopefully climate friendly enterprises. So I just want to make that tie-in since I know that is an important point for council. So I think I will hand it over to Alana to provide a bit of the regional perspective on the housing needs report, and then I'm sure you have questions. I'll be happy to answer.
Okay. Thanks very much, Karen. Through the mayor and to council, thank you very much for having us here to talk about the report. As Karen said, this was a really big project, big in terms of data, big in terms of our collaboration, and I think some really good outcomes. I just wanted to build on some of Karen's points, highlight some of the key messages from a regional perspective that we might draw. I think you all are, we talked a little bit about this when the consultants came to present you with your draft, that this report meets all of the provincial requirements that every local government needs to fulfill for a housing needs report. So you can tick that box happily. Also, this report provides each council and the board with the who and the what and not the how. So as Karen talked, this is very much a beginning, both for us as staff and then certainly for elected officials to decide what you want to do with this information and how we move forward in our communities. One of the big takeaways for us, certainly as planners, is that our housing markets are interconnected. And although we might have known that sort of anecdotally previously, this study certainly confirms that. So it's a good reminder, I think, at the staff level that not all of our communities can be all things to all of our citizens, all of our residents, that we will each community in the rural areas has a different role to play in puzzling this out for our residents. As Karen indicated, younger people and young families are those that are most challenged right now across the region as a whole to find affordable housing. And of course, this is a concern for all of us because it's a real link to what makes up a complete community. If your young families and your young adults can't stay in your community because of housing, there are significant domino impacts. Right across the region, there is a particular need for housing for folks on fixed income, especially within the rental market. So this is something that affects each jurisdiction. As you will see in the Cumberland report, it's true for the region. There's an increase in the number of renter households in 2016 as compared to both 2011 and 2006. And there is a significant gap increasing in those 3 census periods between renter households and owner households in respect to their household income. So that gap is growing. One of the key things, Karen was pointing out some of the links to the strategic priorities around climate change. Related to that and related to a board strategic priority around regional transportation and multimodal transportation. As Karen noted, there's a lot of community happening, as we might imagine, within our region. And so this suggests that making housing affordable includes identifying some of those game changers in a household to make housing affordable. And one of those we know is access to alternative modes of transportation. And alternative, I mean alternative to the private vehicle. This also suggests that focusing new development in the existing core settlement areas, so the municipalities and then the settlement nodes in the rural areas, is really important for us as a region to help get the services in place that individuals and families need in our community in order to be able to live in an affordable way. And ultimately, one of the findings within the regional report is that although the private housing market has certainly met the needs of some households, it has far from met the needs of all households. And again, this is something that we all knew anecdotally, but this report confirms where some of those shortfalls are. On a positive note, however, through our qualitative data, we found that there was a really keen desire right across the region among folks to look for alternative answers to the traditional rental and ownership models, including a desire to explore models such as cooperative housing, land trusts, and even such things as housing authorities. Those are some of the key findings in a nutshell. I'll just speak very briefly to some of the next steps that you might imagine. Karen, of course, has referenced Cumberland's upcoming OCP work, and so that'll be a really important venue for your staff to really dig into the findings and come up with some Cumberland-specific policy pieces. But on the bigger picture, I guess I should say in the real short term, the next deliverable is presentation of these findings to our community. You'll know that we had originally planned to do a public forum April 1st, and we had to cancel that. And so we are still working on doing a virtual session, which would be open to the public, include the presentation from the consultants, and allow members of our communities to pose questions during the session. So stay tuned for that. Karen also alluded to some of the work that staff is doing now and will need to do in the coming weeks and months, sort of a gap analysis around what we learned relative to each community's OCP, and then certainly in my world relative to the regional growth strategy, where we might have some policy gaps and where we might have some opportunities to work together to resolve some of our challenges. One of the things that we want to do as staff is work together to monitor supply. So this gives us a baseline understanding of where we are. As you know, we have a provincial requirement to update our reports on a regular basis. And so the regional district, you might recall one of our regional growth strategy projects within this financial plan is the development of a digital dashboard to serve as a data repository. And so that is a tool that we're working on that will hopefully help us all input the data as we receive it and monitor our supply so that you can see exactly what kind of program regression we're making as we move forward. Another big project that you've all just received confirmation about from my CAO, Russell Dyson, on our poverty reduction strategy grant success. So stay tuned for more on that. But essentially, as a region, thank you again for endorsing your staff's participation. We're going to work together again as a project team and use that grant from UBCM to undertake poverty reduction strategy planning work. And then the last thing I would just like to say is that also on the midterm horizon, we do have a review scheduled for our homelessness and support service. You'll remember that's the regional district service whereby the board endorses the 5-year plan of the Comox Valley Coalition to End Homelessness. So we have a service review. You know, pre-COVID, I would have told you we were going to do it this summer, and now we're just working with the board, pitching some options for when that work will happen. So that's more medium term. That's all I have to say, and I'm happy to support any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Who would like to be first to ask questions? Councillor Kettler.
Well, thanks to staff and thank you, Elena. There was a lot of information in this report, and yeah, my head kind of hurts from it all because I was really trying to absorb it all. But there's so much, and it is a little bit hard to interpret. I think we got some good stuff around Airbnbs that'll help us with future policies around that. You know, we get a good idea of how the demographics are changing. We all knew that young families were moving here, but now we have a pretty good idea about the percentages of that, and that those young families have much higher income than the people that were living here previously. So that is creating more of the income gap that you see in this presented in this report. The childcare issues, I think there's a lot of good information there that'll help us create some policy around that. One of the things I was a little confused about is when we're trying to encourage certain types of development, I wasn't super clear on on what the need was. It's, you know, we do have young families. It kind of seemed like they teased out that 2-bedroom units were the highest demand. But then, you know, it seemed the biggest income gap with that was actually just singles. The affordability issue was really the worst with just singles. So, you know, is bachelor suites, because it just said that there's none available. It's 0 and it's expected to be 0 into the future. But is that, you know, something that we could, you know, improve our housing stock with that, or are we just supposed to target the 2-bedroom? I'd like to have more of a opinion on that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'll give I have a first crack at that, and then allow to feel free to jump in. Yes, bachelor units, it suggests there's a low demand. That's a projection overall. So the projection for that, if I recall correctly, it was not specific to those in housing need. It was overall for bachelor units. So because the percentage of those in housing need is relative to the population is lower, it might not be reflected in that statistic. I do know, working on projects in the past with BC Housing, that they tend to focus more, unless for people in extreme core housing need, they often do build bachelor units. But for people in core housing need or with small families, there's also a need for 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom units, because a family can also grow into that. So it's a little bit driven by also some long-term planning with BC Housing when they invest in units, that they have a big funding call out for this fall. They have another funding intake that groups locally are preparing for to submit. So that funding call usually specifies actually the breakdown. I haven't had a close look at it yet of what kind of units BC Housing is looking for. So while we may have certain demands and needs, there's also the reality that the funding calls reflect a certain preference by BC Housing, or the province provincially. But I have to look into that a little bit closer. Good.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Yeah, I had a similar confusion around the bachelor. So what I'm hearing is that I think there is a demand for bachelor suites in the village, because we have an awful lot of people who work in the service industry and singles who are having a difficult time finding housing. But I also hear that according to BC Housing and what they want to build in terms of affordable housing is not that. So just for us to keep that in mind. One of the things that that struck me about all of this fantastic information that's still floating around in my head was that our infill structure is actually working to improve rental housing availability. And so the densification that we're doing in the core, while we have some struggle with particular locations, is mostly serving to increase that rental stock and provide housing for people. So I'm happy that we've done that and looking to keep that in mind as we move into our OCP review. The other thing that struck me is that what's it called? Where they say it's inadequate housing, is when you buy a heritage home, it's very likely that is inadequate housing. But if we want to preserve heritage in the village, we're going to have to allow for some inadequate housing, because I know from owning a heritage home that the rooms are tiny, and that's part of what makes a heritage house. And so people are making that trade-off. And while it's termed inadequate housing, I'm not sure the people that are actually living in those houses would call it inadequate housing. They're making a choice because they want to live in a heritage home. So that occurred to me as well. And many of us are willing to live with smaller spaces, because we also recognize that everybody having a 3,000 square foot home is not actually sustainable in any kind of way. And so having smaller homes where people live closer together is also conducive to happy families and just a different kind of lifestyle choice, which I don't want to lose. And I also recognize that some people are stuck in really small homes with way too many people. That is a fact, but there is that trade-off with heritage homes. Yeah.
And
Councillor- Oh, sorry, go ahead, Karen.
yes, Mayor and Council, if I may, that definition is actually under discussion, I understand, with CMHC. And adequacy also is how many children per room is appropriate. So if they're under, I believe it's, if they're under 7 years old, then, you know, it can be 2 per room, but once they're older, they have to have their own room. Or once, if it's a boy and a girl, at a certain age, they have to have their own room. So the whole definition, I believe, is under discussion, the inadequacy definition. And sizes as well, for sure, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Councillor Sproul, you wanted to speak.
Yes, we've had a couple of developers want to build bachelor units, single occupancy on the main street, and we've gotten hung up on parking. I'm presuming that's one of the reasons that they seem to have gone away for a while. We couldn't come to an agreement on that. I just generally want to wonder what kind of incentives can we offer to people who build affordable housing. I mean, we've talked about maybe not having to pay parking in lieu, but it has to be an incentive that benefits us. And I'm not sure that parking restrictions are. Anyway, I just wonder what incentives we would be able to offer, and I don't think it could be getting out of the parking requirements. So we seem to be at a bit of a stalemate right now. What kind of incentives?
Well, the other thing is like that, you know, one of those proposals that you're talking about, Councillor Sproul, were micro units as well. So on top of being a bachelor, but they were all very, very small. And so, and a whole building full of them. So we have to think about, that's part of what my question was, is there a demand for an entire building full of them? Or would it be best to have, you know, half of them, you know, 2-bedroom units, and then, you know, a quarter bachelor and a quarter 1-bedroom or something like that. You know, I'm guessing that a mix would be a better solution than a full building, but we didn't quite figure out demand from this report.
Councillor Sullivan. Oh, Karen, did you want to say something more?
If I may just respond to those 2 comments and questions. So the with respect to the parking, the proposed 24-unit bachelor unit complex on Dunsmuir, they did not receive the parking variance, but they did receive their heritage alteration permit. They just haven't made it to the next step to submit a building permit. I did contact the owner when the draft report was available to let him know what the statistics say about demand for bachelor units. So the owner has the possibility, if they want, to ask for an amendment to the HAP, if they want to change the unit composition. So I'm not sure that they wish to do that, but they do have the information. So that's up to them. I don't know if that responds to that. But.
Councillor Sullivan.
And to Councillor Sproul, I'm pretty sure that they paid their parking. Isn't that true? Didn't Rideout pay their parking in lieu already? Karen?
Yeah, to respond to that. So they had to pay security for landscaping, a precondition of the building permit. They would pay the cash only for parking at building permit. So when they apply for the building permit, then the parking is due. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I neglected to just respond to the other question Gwen had about incentives. I mean, there's a number of incentives council can consider, and you can make that a policy, or you can look at that as an individual application comes in. Typical incentives are, yes, you could reduce the cash only requirement for parking. But you can look at that when if a development comes in as other rezoning, say, of course. Some jurisdictions provide tax exemptions, property tax exemptions for 10 years, and it's not necessarily an entire property tax exemption. It may be just for the increase in property tax as a result of the development, not the base property tax that they're currently paying. So that is an option. You can choose to do that. So there's a few, you can waive or reduce DCCs. So that's the typical kind of incentives. Our incentive currently that is in policy and that we do is as soon as an affordable housing, non-market housing application comes in, it goes to the top of the pile. So we guarantee quick processing. That helps with funding applications.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, ladies.
I had not finished yet.
Oh, okay. I was
Yeah.
waiting for you to start. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was waiting for Karen to finish. Just a couple things that definitely this report shows that our infill and density that we started several years ago is definitely working. So that's really nice to see. One thing that I found that didn't seem to be really proper, and I mean, obviously, but on page 81 with the median market rents are nowhere close. It seems like to me, it says 2019 in Courtney, a 3-bedroom rental is $1,280, which is, I don't know if that was even true several years ago. So definitely these numbers aren't entirely right for how much the rental averages are in any way. It seems like now they're even like a 3-bedroom now is probably $1,700, $1,800, $1,900, $2,000 that I see. So just some of those numbers are immediately askew and old. That's all.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because by the time the report started and the report is finished, has it been a year since they started? And things change drastically. It can change drastically.
Yeah.
Yes, I want to thank you very much for all the hard work. The report, I was actually surprised at how lengthy it was, but also pleased to see the amount of information that was in the report. They talked a great deal about a lot of different variables and a lot of different things, and we're going to have quite a bit of work to do to look at what we really want to focus on now. I know they talked about single family homes and how we have gone that way, but I don't think there's been a lot of credit into it. A lot of those single family homes have basement suites in them, and I'm not sure to the degree that they do have them. It's quite high. The other thing that I like in that is the heritage homes. And yes, some of the houses, heritage homes, are small rooms. Many of them are not small. They're well situated. They're have beautiful homes, and what's really nice is the people that are buying the heritage homes are keeping the flavor of the home and modeling the outside to look heritage, but updating the inside of the home. So there's many different homes that are being well looked after. And I think we're very fortunate in that respect that we haven't lost too many of them. And that is to the people that are here and want to build on Cumberland's heritage. So thank you very much for the report. I look forward to talking to you later about what we're going to choose and what we're going to talk about. So thank you.
Thanks.
So would somebody like to move the recommendation?
I'll move that Cumberland Housing Needs Report data results May 2020 be referred to the Advisory Planning Commission and the Homelessness and Affordable Housing Committee for information.
Seconded, Councillor Brown, all in favor? Carried. Next, recommend that council receive the Village Hall meeting report. Councillor Brown, Councillor Sullivan, all in favor? Carried. Rachel is on.
Hi, thank you. we're bringing this report about the village hall to council because our regularly scheduled meeting on June 1st, which is the one we typically hold outdoors, was postponed, and council stressed the importance of that community engagement and asked that the meeting be postponed to a date in July. So staff is proposing July 20th. It's a Monday evening at 7 o'clock for that date. And what we're proposing is that people that would like to attend pre-register. And the reason for that is due to the uncertainty around COVID and the current conditions of the day and medical health orders. And there's a second component is the number of participants. So if we ask people to pre-register, then we'll be able to make a decision on location suitable to those conditions at the time. So we're advertising the July 20th date in currently Cumberland. So we're just looking for council endorsement of that date.
Okay. Councillor Brown? Your mic.
I'll move that council reschedule the postponed June 1st village meeting to now be held July 20th, 2020.
Seconded, Councillor
It's not a
Kettler.
question.
Oh,
Okay,
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Did we advertise that stuff with that went out, Rachel, about having to register and stuff? I'm sure you did, but okay. Just double checking. All right, thank you.
And is there a cutoff to when they have to register by?
We're
Just
asking
looking at-
for 9 o'clock that day. And we're looking at options. We could hold it at the cultural center. We could hold it outdoors in a accessible space, or we could hold it by video conferencing. So we'll keep those three
Village Park
options
or
open.
Village Square?
Yeah.
Village Square would be good. Okay.
okay. All in favor? Carried.
Thank you.
Next, recommend council receive the, pardon? I heard somebody. Nope, she's gone. Recommend that council receive the water SCADA system update report. Councillor Kettler, Councillor Brown. All in favor? Carried. Is Rob on? Yes, he is. There he is.
Good evening, everyone. Fairly quick. So we are in the process of commissioning the plant, hopefully the second week of July, the water treatment plant. And as part of bringing the water treatment plant online, we had Muir Engineering do a review of our SCADA system last year. And part of that review is to recommend software upgrades because the old software, as you read in the report, it's old and antiquated. It's not supported anymore. And we didn't have enough control points to add. So we had I asked the engineer for kind of an idea of what magnitude of cost for the not only the software but other hardware upgrades. And what we're finding is, as we delve into this a bit more, we need a bit more money to complete this, and we really need to complete this in order to bring everything on, including some stuff that we don't have the ability to monitor now with the old SCADA system. So and I'd really hoped to do this under the water treatment plant project 2 years ago. So that was kind of the dream, was we'd have some contingency left over and we'd be able to update our SCADA system, but that didn't happen, unfortunately. So staff is really looking for council's approval for an extra $15,000 from the water stabilization reserve to complete this SCADA upgrade, and to bring forward an amendment to the adopted financial plan as well.
Questions, Councillor Brown?
I just was hoping that you could tell us what the SCADA system does for those of us who have a vague idea, but may not understand.
So SCADA systems they're commonly used, like Hydro uses a ton of SCADA systems, and they tie your equipment into a central computer system in essence. I mean, there's the official definition, but it's really, it gives you the ability to monitor real time what's happening with valves and turbidity levels, chlorine levels, all that kind of stuff. We use it now to monitor a few of those parameters. We also collect data that we need to report on an annual basis to Island Health. So the SCADA systems, it's kind of integral to not only collecting data, but running our system from day to day. If something doesn't work right, you get an alarm that you've got like a low chlorine level, or you've got a high turbidity level, or the power is out. Then you can see if the generator kicks in, that kind of stuff. So it really helps you monitor stuff. And the idea moving forward is for us to really bolster our ability to monitor it with our crew, with our utility operators, after hours, weekends, that kind of stuff as well. So Gavin and I are kind of putting a plan in place.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Kettler?
Yeah, that sounds really good. And I'm not happy that it costs more than we thought, but I'm happy that we're getting a good system where we are going to be able to have all that data at our fingertips. I think that's really important. I just actually wanted to ask about the old chlorine shack. Are we keeping that for redundancy, or are we tearing that down when we commission?
So we're actually, the plan is to keep that in place for a year. So we're going to get comfortable operating the new plant, make sure all systems, controls, everything's working, and then we'll look at decommissioning it a year after. So that's the plan for now.
Anyone else have any questions?
Just very excited to hear that July 2nd is today.
Well, second week in July.
Oh.
So July.
Oh, sorry,
10th,
second week. Okay, we're gonna hold you to that then. So.
Oh,
Listen,
listen. It's been like pulling teeth. They had to fly a laptop in for the for some of the monitoring equipment because that was the only way they could remote in to connect it, because we don't have a SCADA system connection availability. Anyways, it's been a challenge. We're getting there.
Sounds very challenging. Thanks, Rob. I could pass that, I guess. I'll move the council direct staff to fund the additional SCADA system upgrade costs from the Water Stabilization Reserve Fund in the amount of $15,000, and recommend the council direct staff to bring forward an amendment to the adopted 2020-2024 financial plan bylaw to reflect this expenditure.
Seconder, Councillor Brown. All in favor? Carried.
Thank you, everyone.
Next, we have recommend that council receive the COVID-19 recovery activities report for June. Councillor Sullivan, Councillor Sproul, all in favor? Carried.
Okay, thank you, Worship. So this report is a report just to provide council regular updates on the village's response to COVID and our emergency response relating to all the activities. So just a couple of highlights, and I'm certainly happy to answer any questions. So as council is aware, that we're currently still in a provincial state of emergency, and that actually expires tomorrow on June 23rd. We haven't heard one way or the other if that will continue, but we will know by tomorrow if that is continuing. What we are hearing though is that the province is moving towards going into phase 3 of the restart plan, and we will know more information on that this week. I believe there is information being released on Wednesday. But that's what we're hearing right now, is that it looks like phase 3. I don't know if that's an immediate moving into phase 3, or there's a timeline related to when that's activated. The big piece in phase 3, there's not a lot that changes from phase 2 to 3, but from what we understand is that it allows travel throughout the province, and there's a few other areas such as some hotels and resorts that, some are certainly opening, but at limited capacity, and some of those ones will be able to open up that haven't been open. But the biggest piece of that is the ability for people within the province to be able to travel. Some of the other activities just to report out on, we have been continuing to do our tax in-person tax payments, and that will continue through till July 2nd. And your report that gives a little bit of a summary on where things are, and we've actually had very good response both in person, but also the move towards online payments, which has really increased, obviously, with the a number of individuals within the community, seeking different ways to pay their taxes. So that's been another one of those positive outcomes, is the hopefully being able to ease that payment process for individuals that want to pay any time of the day or on weekend. They can do that online, and we've seen that increase. So that'll continue through till July 2nd, which is the deadline. We have reported out, we have finalized our staff, our worksite safety plan. So we're in the process of following those procedures that we have in place, and those are based on the WorkSafe guidelines and protocols. We're also working towards, in the next couple of, probably about a week here, we should have some more detailed plans, but we are looking towards when the period of time that collection for taxes, we are looking at possibly, or the plan is to open up the rec center for answering questions, so more village hall questions. That's the objective there. And so with the challenges that we have in our village hall based on space and access, we're hoping to utilize the reception over at the rec center to be able to answer questions. So these are the general questions that would have been asked at the front desk at the village hall or the village office. We'll answer them over there. So we'll be providing that information out in the next little bit. But the goal is to start that soon after the tax collection is complete. So we'll move from that into opening that period over at the rec center there. And also the recreation department is looking at how to open up some of the facilities, and the main one right now that they're working on is the fitness center, and so there's a lot of restriction to that. So we're hoping to be able to combine those openings, but there's some further work that we need to do in relation to putting those plans in place. But it's coming together, and the staff is working on that as well right now. The other piece there is also we're doing is based on our safety plan, we will bring this back to council. I'm hoping to have this ready for July 12th, but a outline on some of the plan changes that we'd be looking to make here at the Village Hall to meet some of the needs that we need to meet within our safety plan and WorkSafe. So closing off the front area there and having some barriers there. So what we're looking at is we'll bring on July 12th to council a plan which would allow us to put that plan in place over the summer period and reopen the hall, let's say late August, early September. And so between that period of time, we'll be able to utilize the rec center. So we'll be able to have that in person, be able to answer questions and serve the community and any of the residents that would like that. And it'll allow us to do the upgrades that we need to do here. We're still working through that, and again, we'll bring that back to council for consideration on the 12th of July. And just a couple of other quick notes. One is that we have, as a village, we are participating, and this is a group, the regional task group for the economic development. So we are working through with the other Comox Valley stakeholders. And that's just started as of last week there. That group is starting to gather and looking at what the actual strategic direction might look like in the future here, following COVID and where we go in the future. So more information on that will be coming out. And then the last piece I just wanted to, I'd mentioned our last meeting that I just wanted to, more than anything, just cover off some of the major capital projects. So part of that report just covers off some of the major ones. So what I sort of took is that these are ones that are taking significant staff time or at significant expense. So these ones are ones that are falling anything from about $50,000 or more. So these are just, I wanted to, I guess, allow council to see that, so far staff, we've been able to maintain the capital projects, and they haven't been impacted to date in relation to any of our state of emergency or our response. And so we're proceeding ahead with many of these projects as we would traditionally here without this this challenging time of the emergency response. So we will in July, we will provide a more detailed report relating to during our quarterly report of all the projects, but this is just to highlight some of the major ones, the fire hall, a number of roads and utility projects that are underway, which we're just in the process of tendering. And we just spoke about the SCADA system and also the wastewater treatment upgrades. Those projects are all moving along as scheduled with at this point in time limited impacts, if no impacts. So they're underway and moving along. So that's good news that hasn't been impacted, some of these major projects. So I don't know if there's any questions.
Just one comment that I would like to make first is that we're not the only municipality that has not opened their doors at this point. There's other ones on the island that have not opened their doors to the general public. Is that correct?
Yes, that's Your Worship. That's correct. Yeah, there's a number of municipalities that are still. I think right now, I don't believe at this point in time any of the local municipalities open their actual offices up. So within the Comox Valley, none of them have their offices. Some are doing similar to what we're doing, where they're doing tax collection in the rec centers. And so they're all going through a process of reviewing their way to be able to respond and have the public come into these into our offices there. So, but there's a number on the island that are very restricted or closed completely still.
Yeah, people that I talk to don't understand why we haven't opened up. They see all the retail outlets and all the other stores that are opening up, and they are confused as to why we are not opening our doors. And I talk about WorkSafe BC and the regulations that they're putting forward to us, and that's causing us some delays and some reworking of the areas that we have where the public comes into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's certainly an understandable question, and I think focus right now has been on the definitely on the staff safety, but also making sure that when we do reopen, that the public side of things is safe as well. And so we have some challenges definitely physically in the building here that we have to address, and some of those challenges are ones, again, both staff and the public. So I think a lot of facilities have gone with and we're lucky to have 2 sites close by here. So we're going to be utilizing the rec center that will allow us to kind of get through that short-term phase. But one of the things we're looking at is if we can't come up with more of a long-term plan, we certainly will look at more of a short-term plan for our offices here. But you know, no different than any retailers. You know, having one door where staff and the community comes in is actually a fairly large challenge. So that's the one thing that we're addressing there right now. We also even within the village office, we are limited for how many staff are here right now because of the volume of the space required for each individual to have. So we have a kind of a max capacity of staff, and so when that is exceeded by customers coming in or the community coming in, we have to adjust that accordingly. So a few factors. Certainly, we're trying our best to move towards that reopening and putting a plan in place for that is going to be sustainable for the long term.
Thank you very much. Someone else had their hand up to ask? Yes, Councilor Kettler.
Yeah, it was just an aside about the list of projects there, the wastewater treatment. We haven't heard anything about it for quite some time. And I know there's been work accessing different parts of the lagoon there, making inways and widening trails and such. Are we going to be getting a report maybe from our project manager soon?
But yes, what will happen is what the objective is here is during our quarterly update, I've got a full breakdown. I'm going to have that presented to council on that particular project as well as some of the other ones. What we will be doing is having an update on where things are and where we're going to go. We literally have just awarded the contract to commence the next phase of that project just probably about 2 weeks ago. And so we're still, really there isn't anything to report yet other than that contract was awarded. But I would think in the next 3 weeks, prior to our quarterly update, we'll be able to provide a full report on that. But it's just been awarded and they've just started to do that work. And so we'll be able to report out on that one. And obviously that's a major one. We want to make sure council and the community is up to speed on that. And there is also, council gave direction for us to discuss or put a plan in place about community engagement. And so as we start getting that information, that's the next phase of that. Right now, there's no work done. They're just still doing assessments, but that is part of that plan that we'll want to report back to council on what that community engagement looks like.
Great, thank you.
Different things come up on the screen. Councillor Brown.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on that to ensure that before any work is done, including the removal of any trees or any work that looks like that may alarm neighbors or the community, that we are communicating with them before that happens. That's all.
Yeah.
Since we have a community of tree lovers.
Yeah, through your worship, yes, that's definitely a priority for staff. And right now, like I'd mentioned earlier, the planning parts are just to actually lay the scope out of what's going to be done here. So we're a ways off on that, to be very honest, before anything even happens. So we'll have that in front of council before that we even get to that point, for sure.
Great, thank you. The other thing I wanted to mention was I did see an updated piece of information on the economic development, the task force that added a committee member from Cumberland or a business member, anyway, that they did add those people that we requested. So that's great. Hopefully that all goes well.
Yeah, at the first meeting, we made sure that they were added to the list. Yes,
thank you.
And that was done. And there was absolutely no objections at all. It was all supported by everybody.
Great.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much, Clayton. Next, recommend that council receive information from the Comox Valley Community Health Network. Councillor Kettler, Councillor Brown, all in favor? Carried. This is for Councillor Brown. You requested this on the agenda?
Yeah, so we're, myself and Councillor Kettler have been participating in the Comox Valley Community Drug Strategy Committee, and this information was forwarded to us through that committee. And on that same day, I learned of yet another death in our community from a toxic drug supply, and just thought that we needed to continue to have this conversation. I very much appreciate what Island Health is trying to do by offering those 3 services, the episodic OPS and the Lifeguard overdose app, and having a designated location. However, with 401 deaths in the province since March, and 170 in May alone, there is a need for much more of a response than this. We need a safe supply, which will not only keep people alive, but will also very much reduce criminal activity in our communities. So I have a couple of concerns now just for our village, that normally, as I understand, we do some education around naloxone training, and also providing those kits. And I just want to ensure that we are continuing to do that. Do we know if that is in place for the summer?
I'm not aware of that at this point. Are you aware, Clayton?
Your worship, no. I'd have to report back to council. I have not.
Well, we had a workshop last year. I was going to suggest that we have another workshop. That's what happened last year, a year and a half ago. There was a workshop, and you could go and learn how to properly administer it, and then you would receive a kit as well. So I think it's about time we do another workshop.
That's what I was.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping as well, that we could arrange a partnership to provide some training and kits in the community.
And I think last time that it was Rachel that organized that, if I'm not mistaken. If she can hear me? No? Well,
Yeah. Yes, I do
yes.
recall, I think it might have been Island Health or AVI at the time that might have co-hosted it. I would have to go back and look again, and I'll share that with the CAO.
Okay, thank you very much.
I think it was AVI that did it last time, yeah. But I think Island Health is taking over the safe consumption sites, so that might be who to go to for this session.
Was it not held in the fire hall? It
think
might be half.
It was in the Moncrief Hall upstairs, I think.
Oh, okay, that would be a better location.
Oh, there it is.
Oh,
There
here,
it is.
quick.
Than ever.
And then the other thing I wanted to ask is if we might write a letter. I think there's a really great opportunity right now with our infamous and well-respected PHO, Bonnie Henry, and so I don't want to lose the opportunity to advocate for safe supply and just changing our drug policy. So I'd like to ask council to write a letter.
To Bonnie Henry?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Okay. And you want her to be aware of the situation? Is that what you're asking? And for these training seminars to continue?
Well, mostly more around the change in policy. So working more towards, COVID has actually moved the health authority into a position of providing safe supply, but it's not reaching anyone. So I would actually like to advocate for increasing that safe supply and ensuring that it continues beyond COVID, because I think that's part of the bigger solution here.
Okay. Could we also CC Leah Hollins, the chair of Island Health?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. So we'll need a seconder to that, and I can't see anybody, but.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Yes, I just want to add though, in the letter, so part of the problem I think is that physicians in the Valley maybe don't have the comfort level with prescribing the drugs that are needed, and so maybe one of the requests to the provincial health officer could be training for physicians. I think that would help specifically in the Comox Valley. So could we add that to the letter?
I see Clayton's writing. Is that okay?
Certainly. So can we just go back? I just want to make sure we have this clear. So one is the training for physicians, and the other was the continued support.
The increase in safe supply and extending that safe supply strategy beyond COVID.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything further discussion? And you made the motion, Councillor seconded?
Sean seconded.
I second it.
Yes. All in favor? Carried.
Your worship,
Yes?
can I just ask, just back to the first item about the workshop, if council
Yes.
wishes for that to be looked at, if we could receive a resolution on that, and then staff could work on that, just.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we look into with the ADI another workshop for naloxone use
In Cumberland.
in Cumberland.
Seconder? Brown? All in favor? Carried. Okay. No bylaws tonight, no new business, notice, motions, and announcements. The Heritage Committee meeting is July the 6th, and Advisory Planning Commission meeting July the 9th. Question period, are we online or is it going to be taped?
I don't think we are.
Okay.
Yeah, we've been trying to go live through the session here, and I'm unable to do that. So we will upload this as soon as possible to
Okay.
there.
So if anybody has any questions, can they email us?
Yeah, the corporate officer may have, did anything come in?
I don't have any questions, but I did have from the public, but I have a question about the housing needs assessment report, if that's okay.
Yes.
CAO. There was a second recommendation there, and I just needed to confirm that council did consider that second item under that report, item 6.1, that the council accept the housing needs report data results.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that. I didn't read that one.
Okay.
I will now read the move that council accept the Village of Cumberland Housing Needs Report data results May 2020.
Seconder? Councillor Kettler, all in favor? Carried. Thank you very much for catching that.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, Rachel.
And next, we have close and adjourn open meeting. This is new. This is something we're been asked to try. So would somebody like to make the motion?
I'll try. Recommend that council close and adjourn the meeting to the public pursuant to section 90 of the community charter to consider personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the municipality or other position appointed by the municipality. Law enforcement, if council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the conduct of an investigation under or enforcement of an enactment, and discussions with municipal officers and employees respecting municipal objectives, measures, and progress reports for the purposes of preparing an annual report under section 98 annual municipal report.
Seconder? Councillor Kettler, all in favor? Carried. Thank you very much.